Is that go on the left to advance?
And it'll go forward? And how do I go backward? That right?
To the right.
Okay.
So left to go forward, right to go backwards.
Great, thank you. Yeah. There you go. That's right. Little things add up to big things. Yeah. Thank you, Peggy. If we don't think that we are in an era when we need to do something about the violence in our society, please look at the exhibit at the front here. This is out of the Spokesman Review this last week, and it essentially takes every day of this year so far, and it identifies the mass shootings that took place on each of those days. And if you look carefully at it, there's only a few days that don't have any guns in them. There's only a few days where there wasn't a mass shooting in the United States. The question is clear then, how do we cope with this increasing culture of violence that we have here in the United States? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here today. And welcome to this education hour. It's devoted to the development of an organization called New Story Spokane. It's a nonprofit organization here in Spokane that Roger Hudson and I and a group of us have been putting together for about the last 2 to 3 months. It started with a porch circle that we are a part of, and a porch circle, I'll explain a little bit later, is just an organizational grouping of people that are friends that get together once a week to support each other, and we'll talk about what that looks like. Out of our experience in our porch circle came the idea of a New Story Spokane festival. And this is what I wanted to explain to you. Our members include a Gonzaga professor, a building scientist, a Quaker, a retired physical therapist, and Roger and me. After meeting for almost 2 years, we decided to listen to what Father Richard Rohr was saying. It was frustrating to me to look at what was happening in society and try to figure out how do we possibly as individuals deal with the level of violence and bad that is going on in society. And I kept coming up with the answer that there isn't anything that I can do individually to deal with all of that. But Richard Rohr gave me an idea about how individually we can begin a process that begins to address some of these problems. Richard Rohr said this: the best critique of the bad is the practice of the better. The best critique of the bad is the practice of the better. We saw the bad in society and we decided to do something good. And we decided that we would create a nonviolent organization that had at its purpose trying to change the culture in Spokane to be a more nonviolent culture. The bad is real easy to find. Gun deaths, which are now the #1 cause of death for young people in the United States. #1, gun deaths. The suppression of African American voting rights and women's rights by our courts and legislatures. And the growing economic instability and discrepancies here in the United States, just to name a few of the bad. For me, the practice of the better was doing something that confronted the bad. I concluded that nothing short of a cultural shift was going to do that. But how do you change a society? I concluded it's not going to be done by our political leaders. Frankly, they can't begin to believe, they can't even agree that it's Sunday. So there's no chance that they're going to come up with solutions to this problem. This is what Ivan Illich told me that got me on the right path. Ivan Illich said, neither revolution nor reformation can ultimately change a society. Rather, you must tell a new, powerful tale, one so persuasive that it sweeps away the old myths and becomes the preferred story. One so inclusive that it gathers all the bits of our past and our present into a coherent whole, one that even shines some light into the future so that we can take the next step. If you want to change a society, then you have to tell an alternative story. That is the purpose of New Story Spokane, to begin an intentional process of telling that new seventh story as an alternative to the traditional 6 stories. The New Story movement itself was started by Gareth Higgins, who wrote those books that Peggy introduced you to. He's an author and a poet. He was born in Ireland, and he grew up in Ireland during that country's civil war, known as the Troubles. He has a PhD in sociology, and he speaks widely about storytelling, violence reduction, and the connections we have with the earth. He led a peace-building community in Northern Ireland, and he helped found the Wild Goose Festival and the New Story Festival. Following their civil war, Gareth was involved in the reconciliation efforts between the Catholics and the Protestants in Northern Ireland. He helped to teach the first international course on peacemaking, and he is the author of several books, including The Seventh Story and How Not to Be Afraid. He currently lives with his husband in North Carolina for 6 months, and the two of them live in Ireland for the other 6 months a year. Gareth has been our consultant and our mentor as this process has developed, and he will be our keynote speaker at Gonzaga University on May 19th and 20th for our New Story Festival. The new story isn't really new. The story that we tell about the world shapes how we live. The stories that we tell dictate how we behave one to another. There are 6 familiar stories that have been repeated through history and have taught us how to dominate, fear, or withdraw from the world and the beautiful people in it. There's a 7th story which provides a path of open-heartedness towards others. While the new story is not new, it is new in the sense that it is not the dominant story that we tell of humanity. So what are those 6 dominant stories? Let's take them one at a time. The domination story is a concept that shows us as having more power than them. It's us over them. This story has been playing out for our entire histories. It's the story of ruling over others. This story is as old as creation and has played out thousands of times in our history. It's playing out right now in the Russia-Ukraine conflict that's going on. The revolution story is a different one. It is about us overcoming them. The revolution story is concerned with the response of people to poor governance by the dominator. The result is usually overthrowing the dominator and replacing him or her with another dominator who oppresses the people all over again. The third story we tell ourselves is then the isolation story, us apart from them. The isolation story refers to withdrawing into our silos and judging the world from afar in our own exclusive communities. Unfortunately, those communities also fall victim to the 6 stories. The purification story is all about us rejecting them, us against them. It's about scapegoating minority groups in the United States and blaming them for the social problems that we have and using that to justify eliminating them, whether it's by physical deportation to another country or the suppression of African American voting rights in this country. They are both purification responses to their presence in our society. The accumulation story is about us hoarding from them. The accumulation story refers to the accumulation of more shiny things than you have. And it can also refer to the accumulation of anything that doesn't necessarily belong to us, whether it's personal goods or other countries, for example. And again, we return to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. This is in part what Russia is doing to Ukraine right now, and which it previously did to the entire bloc of Eastern European countries following the close of World War II. This story that's happening in Ukraine and Russia today is just a repeat of the same story that we've been telling ourselves from the dawn of time. And finally, the sixth story, the victimization story, us under them. Again, you can begin to see that it's all about creating this conflict of us versus somebody else, one group versus another group. And that is what has led to the tremendous polarization and the inability of the people in this country to once again get together and calmly try to decide, how do we solve some of the problems that we have in this country? We can't even sit down and talk to each other. The New Story movement is designed to meet each of these six stories with the seventh story of love and nonviolence. Its goal is to elevate the discussion to a new level and advocate new story practices which will avoid the failures of the other six stories, and to begin to generate a new set of values and beliefs and benefits for society, while at the same time raising all boats instead of just those of the privileged few. Characteristics of the dominant stories. Rivalry and anxiety are important. When rivalry and social anxiety levels reach a certain point that begins to threaten the social stability, the human tendency is for the dominant members of the group to pick a weaker member of the group upon whom to vent their frustration. We do that with black and brown people and gay people in this country every single day. Scapegoating and sacrifice. Again, the strong kill the weak and justify it by claiming that there is a need to avoid catastrophic violence, such as a civil war or something even more serious, by using limited violence against the weaker members of society. Okay. And finally, violence itself is a means to an end for all six of those dominant stories. The six stories all share the same characteristics, which are in conflict with the New Story characteristics. The most significant is the emphasis on nonviolence. But what does that really look like? It may mean having fewer guns on the streets. It may mean we tone down our speech and we're less confrontational at school board meetings and other such events, so that we talk with each other instead of yell at each other. Yelling is just another form of violence. It's just increasing talking to a violent level. The concept of rivalry is interesting. On the one hand, a certain amount of rivalry is a good thing. It spurs healthy competition with multiple benefits for all parties. However, rivalry can also be extreme, and it can lead to social instability when it's used against other groups. When that stability is threatened, bullying ensures that blaming a minority group for the problems that make us feel better about ourselves, but it will also throw the responsibility for solving the problem onto the shoulders of the people being scapegoated. They're causing the problem, they're the ones that should solve the problem, as opposed to the other way around. Are these behaviors then inferior to the seventh story of love? Well, what does the seventh story look like? It requires a change in our thinking. Power with is going to replace power over. The idea that collaboration should become a part of how we do our behaviors and our business one to another should be one which is collaborative in nature, not one where you have unequal partners, where one is dictating to the other how to do a thing. Status will depend on service. It will no longer depend on accumulating more stuff than the other guy, and therefore assuming that therefore that person is more equipped to make the decisions for the rest of us. Status will depend on service. Domination is replaced by equitable community. Instead of one person or a small group of people having the largesse of society, let's spread that around. Let's let everybody participate in the largesse of society. Revolution, instead of creating a new dominator for us, let's start revolution, but let's lead to reconciliation instead of revenge. That's what the new story would look like if we were successful. Isolation will be replaced by rejuvenating silences, where we learn from those celebrated on the margins of our society. They have a great deal to teach us if we would just listen to them. Possessing will be replaced by sharing. The Haystack Heights community up on the South Hill, the fellow that started that is going to be one of our breakout speakers at the festival. And he's going to talk about how they have taken this small community and they have created an ability to not possess, but to share. And they have a whole garage full of things. Here's a bunch of ski equipment. Here's a bunch of camping equipment. Here's a bunch of gardening equipment. And everybody in the facility gets to go use all of them. They all get to use them for whatever their needs are and then put them back when they're done. It's the concept of changing possessing to sharing with one another. Self-interest will be replaced by the common good. Well, to do this, we have decided that we cannot individually do this by ourselves. So we've decided to create a nonprofit corporation to advocate for the New Story movement as we grow it here in Spokane. Well, how do we participate in the New Story movement? First of all, pay attention to your personal well-being. We can't really do anything for society if we're not healthy ourselves and in a good place with the way that we look at the world. Secondly, don't pay attention to the sick stories. Withhold your attention and your money from any media outlet or public figure that uses fear to build an audience and a following. And that's true on both the left and the right. 3, seek mentors which will help you find your calling to the common good. Not everybody knows right off the bat, just because they want to be helpful, on how to be helpful and what would be most productive given their own talents and gifts. Tell the truth by seeking wisdom over propaganda. See the whole world again as your home, not just Spokane. See the whole world as your home. We change how we behave when we start looking at things as all of it being our home instead of just this part of it, okay? Learn spiritual practices that heal and offer resilience to others. Open yourself to seeing through the eyes of another person. Join or start a porch circle. Well, what is a porch circle? A porch circle is a small group of folks who have committed to living out the new story. Ours has met for about the last 2 years here in Spokane. The goal is to support each other and promote the new or seventh story. At the weekly meetings, we ask 3 questions. 1, what is bringing me life? What is challenging, draining, or deadening me? And what have I done this last week to live out the new story? The secondary question that is asked at the end of the porch circle meeting is there anyone who would like to ask anything of the group, or is there anyone who would like to offer anything to the group? That may be as simple as, is there somebody who can watch my kids when I go to the movie with my wife next Thursday? Okay, it can be that simple. 8, participate in our Guns to Garden Tools program. Once a year, our porch circle sponsors a man in Seattle to bring his forge over and melt down guns. And we end up using them to create jewelry and garden tools that are then used in the community gardens around Spokane. He's coming over in August, and he's going to bring his forge, and we have an assault rifle and a shotgun and a pistol that we're going to melt down in August, and you are all welcome to come join us as we do that. And finally, participate in the New Story festivals as a way of networking and expanding this New Story community, and as a way of learning new and interesting ways to support the common good. Okay. How did we develop New Story Spokane? First of all, it developed out of our experience as a porch circle. We got to a point where we now were friendly enough and we had enough trust built up between us that we decided we wanted to go out and actually begin to do something. in the area of how the news story should work. So we decided that we would create a nonprofit corporation that would give us a vehicle that would allow us to do some of these things. Gonzaga University Law School agreed through their legal clinic to serve as our attorney. And they have already established the corporation, and they in the fall will be procuring our nonprofit status. 3, Gonzaga University, through the Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment, has rented us the space at Gonzaga at a discount and awarded us a grant and agreed to co-host the first News Story Festival. Smith Barbieri Progressive Fund has extended to us a fiscal sponsorship agreement to permit us to use their 501c3, to permit us to fundraise and have tax exemption pending approval of our own numbers sometime in the latter part of the year or the beginning of next year. Linda and Chuck Anderson and their staff have helped us to develop our logo and the brand of the organization and create the registration vehicle that we're using for the festival. And finally, support from the progressive community. Participants in the News Story Festival. Warren Saylor is going to open the festival for us. Warren is a leader in the Spokane tribe. He is a consultant and a member of the Spokane Tribal Business Council and an expert on tribal history. Warren is going to give us our initial land acknowledgement on Friday evening as we begin the proceedings, and that will follow with a presentation by Warren as to why it's important to save the salmon, not only for the indigenous folks in the area, but as well for the dominant society as well. Gareth Higgins, you've already heard about Gareth, he will be here. He is going to be our master of ceremonies, essentially, and he's going to be the individual that lays out the news story vision for Spokane. Sarah Thompson is a singer and a songwriter. Sarah is coming in from Minnesota. She will be singing songs that have news story lyrics to them. And she will give us songs during the festival, and then at the end of the festival on Saturday evening, she will give us a concert singing news story lyrics. Michael Smith is our scientist. Michael Smith is a fellow over, he's a fellow over in Kalispell, Montana. Michael has created a closed-loop system that he is going to bring to Spokane. The closed-loop system is designed to address climate change and our carbon footprint. And what he has done is he's created a system where he takes the detritus in the forest and waste products, and he puts it into a device called a dragon. He heats it to 1,000 degrees, but it's all done inside. There's no emissions done. He creates a biochar. Another part of his process, he's raising algae, green algae, which has the ability to pull carbon out of the air, and it's highly enriched then at that point, energy-wise. He harvests the algae, harvests the biochar that he's created, he infuses the algae into the biochar, and that is then used to regenerate land that has been over-farmed or overused to bring it back to its vitality. And that byproduct of this whole process is the generation of electricity, which powers over 100 homes near his facility. He is coming to share that technology with Spokane. He's not going to patent it. He wants everybody to have it. So it's going to be him talking to us about how we can change our approach to climate change and also do some other very beneficial things through this process. Joel Williamson, co-founder of the Grain Shed, he's going to talk about the creation of a more just and equitable food industry in Spokane. And how can we do that? Mariah McKay, she's a creative connector and the founder of the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. She's going to speak on how to build a prosperous, equitable local economy. Mariah's been given $1 million grant, and she's using it to develop an approach that will operate to reduce the credit card fees that are paid by small businessmen to the point that they can then recoup those fees and use them to hire more workers. Jim Dawson is her husband. He's the co-founder of the Haystack Heights arrangement right up across the street from Highland Park United Methodist Church. He's going to talk about how we build community through housing. Jim Sheehan, he's an attorney and a founder of the Community Block downtown. He's going to talk about why he took the money he received from his aunt when she died, and instead of just buying an island and a yacht and going off and living the good life, he chose to put that into the community block downtown. He purchased those buildings, he put all those solar panels up, he created the water retention systems, and now he rents them out to the tribes and the various nonprofits in Spokane. He is going to be talking about responsible wealth. How do we use our wealth to help and infuse the common good? And then Kara is going to be talking about, she's the owner and founder of a place called Measurement, which focuses on helping organizations integrate sustainability strategies and to meet the rigorous standards of social and environmental accountability and transparency. These are just a few of the folks that are going to be meeting with us when we get there. News Story Festival supporters. We have been really, really pleased with the response that we have gotten from the progressive community in Spokane. Not one single speaker that is going to speak at this festival or was approached by our team refused to speak. Not one person said no. And not one progressive organization in Spokane said no. And as you look at the News Story Festival supporters, the Smith Barbieri Progressive Fund, they not only have agreed to receive all of our money, but they've agreed to pay all of the service fees and charges associated with you going and giving us money so that we get 100% of what you've donated to News Story Spokane. So they have also given us a $2,500 grant on top of that. Community Building Foundation, we got a $4,000 grant from them, and they are going to be supporting us as well. Spokane Riverkeeper, Inland Northwest Land Conservancy, all are going to be sponsors of the News Story Festival, and many of them will have exhibits there that you can look at to see what they're involved in locally. The Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance, the Spokane County Human Rights Task Force. The Human Rights Task Force also offered us their 501c3 tax-exempt number as well as a fiscal sponsor. The Center for Climate, Society, and the Environment at Gonzaga University, they gave us the facility at half price plus a $1,000 grant to assist us. The Spokane Conservation District, Palouse Heritage Grain, Spokane Audubon Society, Measurement Consulting, the Grain Shed, Dishman Hills Conservancy, and 350 Spokane are just a few of the organizations who will be present during this festival and who have indicated an interest in doing what we're doing. But we're also interested in your ideas. How do we create a more nonviolent culture? To that end, you're invited to join us for the News Story Spokane Festival on May 19th and 20th at Gonzaga. And you are invited to either develop or to start a porch circle, and we'd be happy to help you do that. To that end, I will offer to this group 4 free tickets to our event. The tickets themselves are $45, so that would be $90 for a couple. If there are 4 couples or 4 of you who want to bring another person to the festival, I will take care of 4 of those 8 tickets. That way, if you want to come as a couple, it'll cost you $45 for the couple instead of $90. So if you have an interest in coming and would like to get a free ticket to go with a paid ticket, let me know and I'll make sure that you get the information you need to register for that. When I look at my 3-year-old granddaughter and examine the current state of the world, I just can't stand by and not actively do something to make the world a little bit better for her. 2 individuals have had a significant impact on me. Representative John Lewis, an African-American member of the House of Representatives from Georgia, now deceased, invited us to get into some good trouble. That invitation, coupled with Richard Rohr's invitation to critique the bad by practicing the better, has brought me to this point. I see the News Story movement as part of the answer to so many of the problems that we have in our modern society. With gun violence at record levels, the challenges of climate change promising to dramatically alter how we live on the planet, and the record economic inequality in our society, we need to get serious about telling a new and more compelling story that rejects violence and commits to prosper together by raising all boats while simultaneously preserving the planet for our grandkids and their kids. It's long past time that we started telling a new story, and I invite you to journey along with us. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Peggy. Yes, the event's going to start this coming Friday, not this Friday, May 19th, Friday, May 19th, and Saturday, May 20th. Our marimbas are going to be providing the music for registration. The event itself will be held in the Hemmingson Student Center on the Gonzaga campus. We have reserved much of the second, third floor, and the basement where we will hold our concert. These little flyers down on the table here, you're welcome to take one of them. If you want to just hold your camera on your phone up to the QR sign here, it'll automatically take you to our Eventbrite site for registration purposes. So if you want to have a free ticket and go along with a paid ticket, let me know so I can give you the code that you need to get your free ticket. Anybody else? It's going to start at 4 o'clock as registration on Friday the 19th, and then things will get clicking about 5:30. That will be the first plenary sessions when Gareth will be talking. The first speaker will be Warren Saylor, who will be giving us a land acknowledgement and talking about our salmon. And then that will be followed by Gareth giving us a vision for the new story as a movement.
And then does it go through Saturday?
And Saturday starts at 8 o'clock. We'll have pastries and coffee for you first thing in the morning, and then some treats during the day for some breaks. And then that evening, lunch will be on your own, and we'll give you a map that shows you all the various places you can eat around the campus there. And then in the evening, we're going to have just kind of light hors d'oeuvres or heavy hors d'oeuvres and a concert. And Sarah's going to be singing new story lyrics for about an hour to an hour and a half, and then everybody is free to go. So we'd be done Saturday evening right around 8:30. All right?
There are sessions during the day Saturday?
Yes, if you go online, we have set up for you a complete agenda for the whole 2 days. So go online and you can actually see the times and a description of what everybody is going to talk about so that you can begin to look ahead of time as to how you might want to be involved. One of the younger members of our group is doing a series of what are known as embodiment sessions. One of them is going to focus on the cultures of music in 6 different cultures in Africa, South America, and so forth. Another is going to focus on stories relating to the personal experiences of being in a war zone and so forth. So there's a lot of different kinds of things going to be going on. Each of the events that is being spoken of in the morning will also be spoken of in the afternoon. So that way, of the 8 sessions that you can go to, that way you're going to be able to pick up 4 of them. Yes?
Are there any options for people who cannot physically attend?
No, we won't have any. We just weren't able to work something up more extensive than that. Yeah. In 2 months, this is what we worked up in 2 months. Yeah.
How will you know, looking back, on whether the festival has been, how will you know, looking back, on whether the festival has been a success?
There's two ways to look at it. Some people look at it from the perspective of how many people come. We're not terribly interested in that. That's one of the reasons why we're giving away some free tickets. If we were able to get 60 to 75 people to participate the first year, we would be real happy with that, because we've got an opportunity to go to 150 with the facilities that we've got. But secondly, the fact that we've been able to establish a nonprofit organization and that we've got attorneys and others that are working with us to make it a reality already has been a success. We already have a vehicle that we can begin to use immediately to do some of the things that we're talking about. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to come see us.